You know a war movie is bad when actual veterans and historians call it an embarrassment. These films didn't just miss the mark, they insulted veterans, rewrote history, and in one case made John Wayne so furious he called it anti-American drivel. These are the 10 worst World War II movies Hollywood should be ashamed of. On paper, this sounded important, finally telling the story of black soldiers in World War II Italy, a real chance to bring a forgotten chapter to the screen. But here's where things go sideways. Lee took a real-life massacre, then rewrote history for the sake of drama. In his version, a local resistance fighter betrays his own people, triggering the massacre. Problem is, none of that actually happened. The real St. Anna massacre was a planned Nazi war crime with zero provocation. That's not just opinion, it was proven by an actual tribunal in 2005. So when Italian historians and surviving partisans saw this, they were furious. To them, this wasn't just a bad script, it was an insult. Lee, though, doubled down and basically told the critics to face their own history. He never apologized, actually refused to do it, which only made things worse. But even putting the controversy aside, the movie itself just doesn't work. It's overlong, jumps between different tones, and tries to do mystical fantasy, brutal violence, and soap opera all in one film. It's a mess, one that was trying to honor black soldiers, but just ended up muddled and historically inaccurate. Just imagine this for a second. You've got $65 million, Bruce Willis, Adrian Brody, and what you end up with is one of the worst reviewed war movies ever made. That's Airstrike. The movie set during the Japanese bombing of a Chinese city in 1943, Bruce Willis is an American training Chinese pilots, giving motivational speeches that make you wince, and for some reason Adrian Brody is also along for the ride. Everything about this is a disaster. The story's a mess, the dubbing is so bad it's distracting, CGI looks like something out of a cartoon, and Bruce Willis honestly seems like he's just there to cash the check. They did so many re-edits after production problems, you can see the seams everywhere. The film ended up getting a 0 on Rotten Tomatoes. People hated it, theaters yanked it quick, and it was dumped online. Critics called it maybe the worst World War II movie ever. Even Spielberg can have a career low point, and this is it. 1941 is supposed to be a World War II comedy. People in California panic after Pearl Harbor. Problem is, it's just not funny. You've got John Belushi, Dan Aykroyd, Ned Beatty. You'd think it would be at least watchable. But no. Critics shredded it. They said it's just a loud, confused mess, mistaking slapstick for actual comedy. Even military veterans hated it. Spielberg later admitted it was probably the biggest mistake of his career. In his words, the reaction was like I'd committed a war crime. The backlash was so strong even John Wayne got involved. Spielberg actually offered Wayne a part, but Wayne read the script, got angry, and said it was the most anti-American piece of drivel he'd ever seen. It made $95 million, but compared to Spielberg's earlier blockbusters, over $780 million combined, it was a big flop. These days, 1941 is basically the example of how not to make a war comedy. This one stings a bit because you want it to be good. George Lucas producing, a big budget, and a real chance to finally spotlight the Tuskegee Airmen, America's first black fighter pilots. Except instead of digging into the real racism these men faced, the movie just glosses over it with a few speeches and generic battle scenes. Critics called out how shallow it was, said it completely missed the opportunity to honor the airmen's real story. Instead, you get cliches, flat characters, and dialogue that sounds like it was written for a video game cutscene. Only 40% on Rotten Tomatoes, audiences got bored, and worst of all, a lot of people thought the events were all true, when in reality a ton of it was just made up. If there's ever been a case of a true story getting the movie it didn't deserve, it's this one. The USS Indianapolis delivered atomic bomb parts, got sunk by a Japanese submarine, and the crew had to survive days in shark-infested waters. Sounds intense, except this movie just isn't. Nicolas Cage is the lead, but even he can't save it. The CGI sharks are embarrassing, the acting is stiff, dialogue is wooden, and the tone is all over the place. They wedge in a pointless love triangle and corny one-liners that just undermine the actual tragedy. Critics hated it. 18% on Rotten Tomatoes, only $2 million at the box office on a $40 million budget. It's not unwatchable, but it's not worth watching, and it certainly didn't honor anyone. I don't know if there's a more obvious case of Hollywood trying to make a blockbuster serious, but missing everything that matters. Michael Bay basically took one of the most important moments of World War II and squeezed it into a melodramatic love triangle. Ben Affleck, Josh Hartnett, and Kate Beckinsale all looking sad, while history just kind of happens in the background. Historians tore this movie to shreds because of all the inaccuracies. Veterans were furious. One, who actually survived a Japanese prisoners of war camp, called it insulting and disgusting because the film ignored what really happened and who really paid the price. Another veteran said the whole thing felt like a slap in the face. And it's not just the romance plot. This movie basically has two pilots winning the entire battle single-handedly. Sure, Michael Bay can blow stuff up, no one's denying that, but it doesn't matter how good your explosions look if you screw up the history this badly. Critics destroyed it. Rotten Tomatoes has it sitting at 24%. The attack sequence looks impressive, but it doesn't save the rest of the movie. Some things just don't get a free pass. On paper, Escape to Athena sounds like it should have worked. Roger Moore, Telly Savalas, David Niven, Elliot Gould, all in a movie set on a Nazi-occupied Greek island. You'd think you're in for a solid World War II adventure. Instead, you get this weird mix of camp breakout movie, half-baked heist, and a comedy that never lands. The tone is all over the place. Motorcycle chases, corny one-liners, and out of nowhere, a disco dance number. It honestly feels like the filmmakers couldn't decide what movie they were making, so they just mashed everything together and hoped for the best. There's a Rotten Tomatoes review that nails it. It's like the studio sent a bunch of big-name actors to a Greek island, filmed whatever they felt like, and called it a movie. Critics hated it. Called it silly, tone-deaf, disrespectful to the war. The history gets trivialized, the cast is wasted, and honestly, it's just embarrassing. If you've never heard of the Misfit Brigade, you're not missing much. It's based on a novel about a German penal unit on the Eastern Front, but the movie takes that and turns it into a weird mashup of violence and slapstick comedy. It doesn't work on any level. So you've got these convicted German soldiers supposedly on a super dangerous mission. Sounds interesting, but then you get scenes with them rescuing kittens out of bombed buildings and tossing out corny punchlines. The humor is supposed to be dark, but it's just awkward and uncomfortable. Even the production is a mess. They use cheap Yugoslav tanks instead of real German armor, so everything looks like a bargain bin reenactment. Critics hated it. War historians hated it. There's no reason for this movie to even exist. Shining Through might be most famous for actually winning the Razzie for Worst Picture, which should tell you everything you need to know. The cast is stacked. Michael Douglas, Melanie Griffith, Liam Neeson, but none of that helps. The setup sounds decent. Griffith's character is an American secretary going undercover as a spy in Nazi Germany. But instead of any actual suspense, you get stuff like her literally baking pies for a Nazi officer while sneaking around for secrets. The whole thing is just absurd. Critics especially went after Griffith. Her accent is all over the place, her character is unbelievable, and she looks completely lost. Then there's the romance subplot with Douglas as her Nazi boss, which is just clumsy. The filmmakers managed to check off every bad Hollywood cliché: sappy romance, dumb scenarios, no logic, zero historical sense. Reviewers called it overblown, treacly, and just plain embarrassing. It's regularly listed among the worst World War II movies ever made, and honestly, it earned it. Windtalkers should have been a slam dunk. John Woo directing, Nicolas Cage starring, and a story about the Navajo code talkers in World War II. But the studio barely tells the real story. Instead, it turns into another Nicolas Cage action movie where he's a white Marine protecting one of the code talkers. Right from the start, critics and Native American groups called out the movie for burying what actually matters. Instead of focusing on the Navajo soldiers, you get slow-motion gunfights, big explosions, and invented Hollywood drama, including a fake order to kill your own code talker if things go bad. To be fair, John Woo himself has said it wasn't even his idea. He wanted to make a serious film about trauma and friendship, but the studio just wanted non-stop action. He tried to explain that this isn't a story about American heroes, but they didn't care. In the end, the final product pleased no one. Not Woo, not historians, and not the audience.